Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Bernardo Bertolucci's Novecento, also known as 1900. And this is a film which has, intrigued me for some time. Been wanting to see it for a few years now. And last year I picked up the Masters of Cinema Blu-ray, which is the full, 315-minute cut, because there's many cuts that by studios and that in the past. But this is the full length one. So it's 5 hours and 15 minutes. So it's one of the longest films I've seen, and I was really intrigued because I love epic films. I'd say about half of my top 15 films are epics, 3 hour more. And I just love epic films when they you can get this journey from them, and following these characters for this for a long time. And as well as this, De Niro, he's probably my favourite actor. He's in this film, so I was already really intrigued. And Bertolucci's work as well, I really want to explore. The Conformist, of course, The Last Emperor. I've never seen any of these films, so and they're some of the most acclaimed films of all time. So I thought, I'd start with this, and it's not got the greatest acclaim. It's not even got 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, but there's this kind of like this cult following that's amassed over the years. Some people saying it's a grand masterpiece. It actually says on the back, he went on to create one of the grandest and most legendary epics in modern cinema. So I had some weird thoughts going in, mixed thoughts. Could it be this lost masterpiece? This underappreciated masterpiece, or is it a bad film like some suggest? So I just kind of went in with a neutral, thought process. And from the opening credits, we're greeted to this wonderful Ennio Morricone score. Morricone is one of my all-time favourite film composers, and I have heard this before, this theme, but it's just wonderful. Just a beautiful piece of music. And the first sort of 10 minutes or so kind of shows you some events of the Liberation Day. It's set in Italy, the film. The Liberation Day in 1945. And there's some things happen there that kind of you're left wondering what's going on really, why these things are happening. So it adds a bit of mystery since it's set after most of the film takes place, and you kind of throughout wanting to figure out why this has happened, to these people. And then after that we see the events really from 1901 onwards, where these two kids are born on the same day, and they're opposite ends of the social status, different classes. The Alfredo is he's born into the upper class, this upper class family, and you've got Olmo, who is the other main character. He's kind of born into a family of peasants really. So that's the first hour and a half or so is the childhood sort of aspects. And I was really surprised at how long this actually set aside and took to develop these characters throughout their childhood, because there's a lot of films which I always love these scenes. It shows them how they became what they are, and I was really pleased that this film took a great length, really just a short film length, to show these scenes and build up the characters. And at the hour and 30 mark, I was thinking, why is this film not talked about more? And this isn't a bad film, because these scenes they're so warm. There's such a sense of charm, and really there was a few flaws. This film is known for some of its explicit content, sexual and stuff like animal cruelty, and there was a few things in there that I thought that's not necessary, a bit pointless, but generally I thought the storytelling was really good, visual storytelling, and Just through, you get a sense of these two divides through the the family scenes at the tables, and then obviously the bond grows between the two main characters when they're sort of out and about together. And the cinematography here was absolutely stunning. This is the same cinematographer of films like Apocalypse Now, I believe, Vittorio Storaro, and there's no denying it's some of the best. It's among the best cinematography in these parts that I've ever seen, really. Just everything, the lighting, and as well, the camera movement in this film it has this really this sweeping feel. It's really fluid. There's a lot of tracking shots, and it just moves at. It allows the film to move at an elegant, graceful pace in these parts, anyway. And I was just loving the chemistry between the two kids and how the relationship was developing, and it just had such a sense of charm about the picture, and it was constantly engaging. There was a great cast as well. Sterling Hayden and Burt Lancaster was there as well. And I thought they were both really, really good here. And it just involved me so much in these two families particularly. And I was just thinking, I can't wait to see the rest of the film. I had a break around the hour and 30 mark, just after it had jumped forward in time to the two adult characters played by De Niro and Gérard Depardieu. And I was straight away noticing quite a lot of differences, and what was I could call a great first an hour and a half. It dipped, and certainly after the 2 hour mark, this turns into a completely, unfortunately, different film. And by the end of the film, I was very disappointed, and I thought it took a massive dip. It was like a completely different film, really. I thought I was so pleased with how he captured, Bertolucci captured these early scenes of the childhood times, and most things worked apart from the explicit content and a couple things here and there which just didn't quite fit, unnecessary. But we start to see a lot more graphic content as well, and just bizarre stuff going on. De Niro and the other main character, they get kind of, there's this masturbation scene. It's quite famous. At the same time, everything's shown, and you could say it adds it kind of adds something to the relationship between the two characters, Alfredo and Olmo. But really, it didn't have to be shown in this manner. And then the woman that's doing it has an epileptic fit. And I just thought, this is some of the most bizarre stuff I've ever seen. And I was hoping, it didn't follow in this direction for the rest of the film. And there's many problems in these later hours. De Niro, he is my favourite actor. But in this, he seems, I don't know whether it's just he's been miscast or I don't know what really, but it seems like the script didn't really know where it was going. There's not much throughout these remaining 3.5 hours. There is not much character development really. You could say that they don't really change throughout these hours, and they're not really that engaging. I think De Niro is probably the best actor here in these later scenes. Everyone else is either mixed or awful, unfortunately. Gérard Depardieu, he's fine. He has a difficult role to play, I think, but generally he's fine. It's just there's a lot of overacting from other people. Donald Sutherland in particular. I heard before this film that he played a great villain. Attila, his name is, and I don't believe so. I think it's one of the most one-note villains I've ever seen, and it seemed like Bertolucci was trying to just create more, as evil scenes as he could, just to show how, in our face, how evil the character is. There's some really disgusting stuff going on. I was quite shocked at. Just unnecessary, It's just lazy writing, really. Just trying to create as many, of the most evil, over the top evil stuff to do, just to, make him, the villain. Obviously, he is the villain, but as well, the performance is really, it's really campy actually. It's way too over the top. Almost cartoonish. And his partner in it. I think her name was Regina in it. She's even worse. She plays his partner, and her acting is terrible in this film. And I just thought she was so over the top and distracting. It was really uncomfortable to watch. And some of the stuff that goes on, spinning a kid round after obviously molesting him, and he spins him round and then his head explodes or something, and just in the way it was done, it was just disgusting. No need for this. It had already established that he was obviously not a nice guy, but throughout the film it just makes repeated attempts to just cram it in your face that this is like the most evil character in a film. And these this pairing, these two characters are just awful. Some of the worst villains I've ever seen. Just uncomfortable to watch. And there's a lot of other issues. The pacing goes awry. After the 2 hour mark, I'd say. And the direction, it just doesn't seem to know where it's going. The picture. He's obviously trying to make loads of points about fascism and communism, and some of these attempts are so obvious and so poorly, heavily handled. It's a joke, really. What started as quite a nuanced and subtle film, quite a patient film, turned into just a desperate film, really. Just constantly trying to cram in your face the political messages, really. There's at one point near the end of the film where Olmo talks to the camera and just says about fascism and stuff. And if you've spent at that point like 5 hours on a film, why talk to the camera at the end just to give a message? Because that's what the film is trying to do. Not through just talking to the camera like that, and I just thought that was cheap as well. But this turns really into after the 2 hour mark of something resembling Heaven's Gate, which I have seen and I detested. I hated that film. Overall, I think this is better, but it's very similar. It's got similarities. Just poor characterizations, stuff that's overindulgent, pretentious. Just style over substance, you could say. And some of the cinematography isn't quite as striking as the first act, but it's still fine. That's one of the things that's got going for it still throughout the picture is the cinematography. And the camera work, everything from the camera work to the lighting, really quite something. And of course the score, there's points where it's a bit cheap, but generally the score throughout the rest of the film is still really good. But I was never felt at the end that these later acts captured that same sort of magic as well as the early scenes, and just my investment in the characters. It's kind of what it should be, a seamless transition from the child to the adult actors with the character. It seems really jarring, actually. It seems like they're just completely different people. And the writing is just almost non-existent at some times. There's just pointless scenes that there's no place for. It just adds to the length of the film, and they just don't add anything really to the story, which is almost non-existent as well. And the character arcs, really. And there's another character I forgot to mention, played by Dominique, Sanda, Ada. She's De Niro's partner, and they get married, in the middle part of the film. And she's dreadful as well. There's a one point as well, a really bizarre scene, where she pretends to be blind, and it goes on for about 10 minutes. First, sort of dancing in this room and stuff, and pretending to be blind, and it's really bizarre and out of place. As soon as she walks on the screen as well, you can tell she's a terrible character, terrible performance, and just annoying whenever she's in the scene. None of the characters really work at all throughout the rest of the film, unfortunately. De Niro's performance is good, but his character is not well written. And towards the end of the film, when the credits roll, you never really feel like, with any of these characters, it's a shame to be leaving them after all this time. And that's what you're meant to feel with an epic. I feel you're meant to feel like, wow, this has been some epic journey, but it's sad to see them go and to leave them. Examples would be Once Upon a Time in America, The Godfather 1 and 2. Films like this, you grow attached to the characters throughout the film, and their stories, their arcs, and you just feel that, while you feel that epic feel at the end, like you've experienced the journey, you feel a bit of sadness. And with this, in the end credits, I was just thinking, I've wasted my time in a way, and I was just, the last shot, it kind of throws back to the childhood times, but and really they're the only parts I enjoyed overall as a film, and this is 5 hours and 15 minutes. So really, to judge a film, say the first hour and a half is great, it doesn't matter if the rest of it's not good at all, because it's still overall for me not a great film at all. Very disappointing. And throughout as well, there's the animal cruelty is really disgraceful. At one moment there's these ducks getting shot, and I think they're actually dying on the screen, which is really disgusting. And there is some bits in the early scenes, but sometimes in a film where it's just a one-off scene, and it's I can sometimes look over it. But throughout this film, it deliberately try and make attempts to just hurt animals, and a pig getting slaughtered as well on screen. And there's a disgraceful bit where a horse, something happens with a horse, I'm not going to say, but then there's manure thrown over everyone, rubbed in people's faces. It's just an ugly film. There's no reason for this really. It's just so extreme. You don't need to do this outrageous stuff just to make a message. And I think in these childhood scenes that was shown that you can do that, but the rest of the film, I was really shocked at. Mostly awful, to be honest, and that was 3.5 hours plus of stuff that was awful. It's lazy writing as well. There's a couple of moments that are just bizarre, where after the kid has been killed by Donald Sutherland, they straight away, everyone comes around, they stand around them all, screaming and that, and then there's this random guy that pops out and says that he was the killer, and it's to protect the main character. It's clearly a plot device, just lazy writing. It's just so obvious, and by the end, I just didn't feel like this achieved what it was trying to do in really every category. Really, the only thing that kept it going a little bit was the camera movements. It still had this quick paced move at times. The sweeping tracking shots, and De Niro was good, although not well written. The rest of the cast were crap really, but the cinematography and the music as well. It kept it from being a complete unwatchable experience, and it's not as bad as say Heaven's Gate is for me, but at times it's not far off, and that's not good praise. It really isn't. This is not a masterpiece of cinema, despite what they say on this, for me anyway. And I would not recommend this film really unless you want to see all of Bertolucci's work, and De Niro's films. But overall, I was shocked really, and it's a shame when a film builds it up at first and actually draws you in, and you are enjoying it, and then to take a turn that just completely goes off the rails, and you know, the story's all over the place. The later acts don't fit together. They don't really say anything that important, really. No likeable characters, really. There's no sense of charm. There's no heart to the later parts in the film. Very cold film. And just drawn out sequences that don't really go anywhere. Really preachy, and just really overacted as well. Quite shocking stuff. Just the last half an hour as well. It's so drawn out, and it's just to make this very one-noted message, really. And then for him to Olmo to kind of look at the camera and just explain loads of stuff. It's really bad storytelling, really, for me. It doesn't fit. And really, this is not a good epic at all. As I say, I definitely wouldn't recommend it. And you know, if it wasn't for that first hour and a half, this could have been an unwatchable rating that I give it. But taking everything into account, you know, the cinematography, the music, the first part, you know, the first act, and a couple of scenes here and there that were passable, I'd say I'd give this film a 35%, which means that it's a bad film. It is a bad film, and at times it's a disgrace to cinema. Really just not necessary, offensive stuff. And it's a shame. I was really looking forward to this. You know, this film. I love epics, and you know, I love Niro as well, and some of the cast. You know, it showed promise. And I was just looking forward to maybe seeing, you know, an underrated masterpiece. You know, according to the cult following, you know, it seems to be this, but a waste of money and a waste of time for me, really. I could have watched 2 or 3 films in this time, and it's not just that, you know, it's just an offensive film. I love epics, I love watching long films, but when it's like this and there's no one to root for throughout most of the picture, and there's nothing really going on with story terms, and it's just offensive and uncomfortable. There's no point. I can see why some say it's one of the disasters of modern cinema, really. And epics especially. It is very comparable to Heaven's Gate. And although I still obviously look forward to the rest of Bertolucci's work, because they are actually really acclaimed, you know, The Conformist, this may just be a dud in his filmography. Because, you know, a lot of directors have this, even Scorsese, which I'll obviously be doing a series of him soon. There's a couple of his works that aren't that great, but this was for the most part very shameful. Yeah, so not a great end really to my night, but you know, if you want to see it just for the early parts, and if you want to study some of the cinematography, then yeah, go for it, but proceed with caution, I would say. Because it's not what I expected, really. But thanks for watching my review. Hope you enjoyed. Check out some of my other reviews and my rankings. Thanks.